Good day, everyone. Today, I'm going to discuss Module 2 of our instructional material, and this is about inclinations to educational technology. And at the end of this lesson, you'll be able to identify the laws of learning, discuss the theories of learning, enumerate the rules of a 21st century teacher. Now, how students learn? A comprehensive collection of principles has been built through student learning studies to explain key variations in the way students study. Consequently, these ideas were used to demonstrate how instruction and a wide variety of other factors shape the manner in which students carry out their academic studies. You may pack your courses with tons of relevant content and awesome visuals, but if they don't make a dent in the learner's mind, they have failed in their purpose. It's time to stop spending long hours working on courses that learners forget the moment they complete the course. You pour much love and sweat into the course creation. Your courses need to acknowledge the habits and tendencies of how people learn. So the experience becomes relevant, lasting, and useful to the learner. Now, educational psychologists have identified several principles of learning, also known as laws of learnings. Make sure you follow these tested principles. You can help your students retain more of what you need them to learn. So first, let's proceed with law of readiness. This is Thorndike's law of readiness, refers to a preparatory set on the part of the organism to learn. It points out that one learns only when he is physically and mentally ready for it. In other words, preparatory set on the part of the organism is an important condition for learning. When the organism is prepared to do some work, the act of doing is satisfying and not doing it is annoying. Conversely, when he does, the act of doing is satisfying and not doing it is annoying. Conversely, when he does not want to work, forcing him to work is dissatisfying. If students are not willing to learn, forcing them to learn will cause dissatisfaction and annoyance. Many children soon get disinterested in learning because they are forced to learn when they're not physically and mentally ready for it. Law of readiness states that learning can only take place when a student is ready to learn. When students feels ready, they learn more effectively and with greater satisfaction than when not ready. Now, it's your job as an instructional designer to create an e-learning course that helps create this readiness to learn. And this can be done by first hook the learners before they ever begin the course. So this can be done via a pre-work activity or a short video introducing the content. By creating anticipation, you are building learner excitement and motivating them before they ever even access the content. And then secondly, let the students know why it is important to learn a subject and what can they expect from the course. By sharing with the learners what they will learn, you are already motivating the students to meet standards set forth. Be very clear about how the content will be organized and lay out the expected outcomes. This removes some anxiety and begins to get the learners excited about accomplishing tasks set forth. By designing a course that is not only interesting but gives the student a measurable sense of what can be accomplished and why, you have followed this law. We have the law of effect. The law of effect principle was developed by Edward Thorndike, suggested that responses that produce a satisfying effect in a particular situation become more likely to occur again in that situation. And responses that produce a discomforting effect become less likely to occur again in the situation. And this is from Gray. Another, Edward Thorndike, in 1898, is famous in psychology for his work on learning theory that lead to the development of operant conditioning within behaviorism. Whereas classical conditioning depends on developing associations between events, operant conditioning involves learning from the consequences of our behavior. Skinner wasn't the first psychologist to study learning by consequences. In fact, Skinner's theory of operant conditioning is built on the ideas of Edward Thorndike. Thorndike studied learning in animals. Usually, he made use of cats. He devised a classic experiment in which he used a puzzle box to empirically test the laws of learning. He placed a cat in the puzzle box, which was encouraged to escape to reach a scrap of fish placed outside. Thorndike would like Thorndike would put a cat into the box and time how long it took to escape. The cats experimented with different ways to escape the puzzle box and reach the fish. Eventually, they would stumble upon the lever which opened the cage. When it had escaped, it was put in again, and once more, the time it took to escape was noted. In successive trials, the cats would learn that pressing the lever would have favorable consequences, and they would adopt this behavior, becoming increasingly quick at pressing the lever. Now, Edward Thorndike put forward a law of effect, which stated that any behavior that is followed by pleasant consequences is likely to be repeated, and behavior followed by unpleasant consequences is likely to be stopped. Now, with the law of relaxation, at first glance, relaxation and intensity seem to be two contradicting terms. It's rare to be an atmosphere that is tense yet relaxed, or to describe a conversation that is intense but relaxing at the same time. However, the two concepts go hand in hand when it comes to athletics. The mental and emotional focus it takes to play your best is oftentimes overlooked when it comes to sports. A crowd will go wild for a slam dunk, a Hail Mary touchdown pass, or a grand slam, focusing on the physical strength it takes to make that happen. While this talent should be praised, it is important to remember the components we can see. Now, relaxation and intensity are crucial to high athletic performance, and true athletes must be able to find the perfect balance. Great athletic performances occur when an athlete feels loose and relaxed, yet giving all him or herself physically. This is not an easy balance to find, and it takes time and patience to perfect it. Now, to find your perfect balance, you must learn how your body relaxes and intensifies. When you practice each concept individually, you can bring them together on the field to witness progress and success. So, first, you must learn to relax. Forced relaxation can lead to stress if not introduced in the proper way. To start, breathing is the key. So when you empty your mind of the task at hand, you can relax. Be calm. Let go and get loose. Remember that there is more than one way to relax. Now everyone finds relaxation in his or her own way. So listen to your body and figure out what works best for you. When you practice effective relaxation, remember these two characteristics. Physiological response. So the first step of relaxation is physical. The heart rate and breathing slow down, muscles loosen, and calmness presents itself. There's this psychological response. So the second step is mental. Thoughts move from fear, failure, and worry to thoughts of relaxation and total control. Second, you must maintain intensity. So once your mind is in focus, you can maintain optimal intensity and focus for the entire performance. Oftentimes, athletes forget to maintain intensity through every practice and every game. This is a bad habit. Great intensity should be a constant effort because mental preparation needs just as much attention as physical preparation. Now, there are two important parts to maintaining intensity. One is preparing for game day. So, training your mind and preparing for the task at hand is crucial to maintaining a high level of focus. Now, when your mind is in the right place during practice plays, it will be in the right place during kickoff. Game day, what you do on game day is a choice. No matter how practice you put in, your competition will tempt you to slack and give up. When fatigue sets in, think of how much you've invested and think of the people relying on you. Great performers simply decide to go out and play with full intensity. They make a commitment to relax and rest well so that they have the energy to play with high intensity for the entire game. In the wise words of Cheryl Adams, energy is equal to desire and purpose. The balance you find mentally and physically will prepare you for tough physical and mental exertion. No matter if it's practice or the championship game, you must make the commitment to breathe, relax, and maintain focus. Now let's proceed to law of association. The laws of association explain how we learn and remember things. The philosopher Aristotle came up with the three basic laws of association, namely law of contiguity, law of similarity, and law of contrast. The law of contiguity states that if we associate things that occur close to each other in time or space, for example, if we think of thunder, we immediately think of lightning, since the two often occur one after the other. Now, when we say the law of similarity, this states that when two things are very similar to each other, the thought of one will often trigger the thought of the other. For example, when we think of coffee, we think of tea as well. Now, with the law of contrast states that the thought of something is likely to trigger the thought of its direct opposite. For example, when we hear the word hot, we often think of the word cold. So these three basic laws were later revised and expanded by other associationists. But the laws of association can be considered as the seeds from which we can trace the beginnings of psychology. With regard to the law of exercise, Thorndike's law of exercise concerns the role of practice in learning. It states that the strength with which our response will relate to a situation depends upon the number of times the response has occurred in that situation. In short, if a response is practiced for a certain number of times, it will tend to be permanently established. Any repeated response gathers some strength. As a result, it becomes easier to repeat it again. Practice will result in strengthening of connections. Its discontinuance will result in weakening of connection, leading to forgetting. Law of exercise operates only in conjunction with law of effect. Practice alone will not strengthen connections. It only provides opportunity for reward to occur more frequently to strengthen connections. In a real experiment, incorrect responses occur more frequently and correct responses occur only once per trial. But only correct response, whenever it occurs, brings reward. So its connection with the situation is strengthened in proportion to the number of times it occurs. Thorndike, Thorndike rather verified this by means of a simple experiment. So students were asked to draw a 3-inch line while blindfolded. Some subjects were given 1,000 trials, but their performance did not improve as they did not get any feedback. So the law of exercise does not operate in isolation from the law of effect. Now, with the law of recency, this law reminds us that we remember the most recent material covered. Now, for this reason, you should make a point of including chapter or unit reviews and building on previous knowledge. So this gives your students the chance to return to earlier material that may have gotten pushed aside by information near the end of the unit. By creating a review exercise that includes both the older and the newer information, it makes it more likely that all the information will be remembered. With the law of expectation, the law of expectation class basically says you're never going to get more than what you expect out of life. If you expect small things, you're going to get small things. So if you expect big things, you're more likely to get big things. There's no promise of anything, obviously, but here's my whole philosophy on it. It takes just as much energy to think big as it does to think small. The stream of life says that you can get whatever you want from the stream depending on what you expect from the stream, from the source. Not to get spiritual here, but I consider God to be the source. If you're going to the source and you expect small things from that source, that's what you get. So most people come to the source, and when it comes to financial abundance, as an example, they bring a teaspoon. So what are they going to get? The most they can get is a teaspoon because that's what they're bringing to the source. So if you bring a bucket, you can get a bucket. If you bring a swimming pool, of course, you can get a swimming pool. Now, your expectation needs to be bigger. The whole thought is you've got to expect more. So how do you expect more? Number one, it is as simple as literally raising your thinking. So I'll give you an example. When I got into network marketing, in the beginning, I struggled for a long time. So I really didn't expect a lot from myself because I had never really produced a lot. My thinking was very small when I thought about my goals. My goals were fairly small too. Now, contrast to when I joined my existing company that I've been with now for over 10 years. So I expected very, very big things and I ended up getting big things from that. Network marketing is really all about leadership. Everything rises and falls based on leadership. So we've got to look at the principles of leadership in network marketing and understanding that people will really only follow a big vision. So this story is coming from an entrepreneur, I should say a successful entrepreneur. So according to him, if you're coming to the source, if your expectation is small, you're not going to inspire a lot of people. Now, if you want to make an extra 100,000 a month and you're cool with that, you can certainly do that. There's nothing wrong with that. In fact, if you love to have 1 million of pesos, you can do that. So just realize that if that's your expectation, you're unlikely to get a lot more than that. And it's possible to get so much more. Now, with the law of differences, this holds that there are just two paths we can take as we observe others' differences. One is we can value another's individual differences, so by focusing on strengths. And then another is we can judge another's individual differences if we focus on weaknesses. So these two pathways have different, even opposite outcomes. So when we judge, we tend to see another's differences as weaknesses. Judgment always leads away from the other person toward relational isolation, and that leads to dying relationship. However, when we value another's differences, we see the strengths that God gave them. Valuing differences leads toward relational unity and oneness, which is a step toward life. Therefore, valuing differences leads to a living, thriving relationship. In every relationship, you have a choice. So you can choose to value another's differences or you can judge them. So your decision will dictate whether your relationship lives or dies. Now, how the law of differences plays out in real life. So when we are first introduced to a new coworker, future spouse, or other individual we often recognize as trend set and style different from our own. So it's natural to be attracted to differences, acknowledging how another's trends complete us. But as our relationship progresses, perspectives change. So often the traits we initially valued as strengths become the very things that we soon judge as weaknesses. Now, this phenomenon happened over and over in work relationships, marriages, and families, and have even experienced it firsthand. So, there's this story years ago. Someone met a very different young woman with an opposite style and opposite strengths to his own. She trusted people and information, and this made it easy for her to get along with many different people. She could even talk to an analytical, factual, calculating person like like that person. So when they were dating, they could talk for long periods. So not long after they got married, he noticed that the girl lacked having all the facts and analysis before talking. She needed to be changed. Soon, the boy began to attempt to turn her into him. So he judged that she would be happier being more like him. And he knew that it would be. So at the same time, she realized she needed to change his tendency to be too logical. So the law of differences was at work. Now, both of them had chosen the two paths available for them. So judgment moved them toward isolation and their relationship began to slowly die. So this went on for 27 years until they reached a point of total frustration and even talk of divorcing. Then intervened. They attended a marriage seminar which used behavioral profiles, allowing participants to understand their spouses. That's when they started to realize that their differences were strengths. So they began to grow closer together and their marriage was transformed. Now, as the law of differences brought their relationship back to life, God breathed new life into their marriage. Now, the choice is yours. So the same principle applies to relationships in ministry, at work, in your family, and in all aspects of your life. The truth is that each of us is different and it's by God's design, yet those differences do not need to divide us. Now, how educational learning theories can impact your education. So, teaching and learning may appear to be a universal experience. After all, everyone goes to school and learns more or less the same thing, right? And but not quite. So as the prolific number of educational theories in learning suggests, there's actually an impressive variety of educational approaches to the art and science of teaching. So many of them have been pioneered by educational theories who've studied the science of learning to determine what works best and for whom. Learning is defined as a process that brings together personal and environmental experiences and influences for acquiring, enriching, or modifying one's knowledge, skills, values, attitudes, behaviors, and worldviews. And this is noted in the International Bureau of Education. Moreover, learning theories develop hypotheses that describe how this process takes place. Generally, there are five widely accepted learning theories teachers rely on. So first we have behaviorism, cognitism, constructivism, humanism, and connectivism. Now, educational theories, teachers, and experts believe these theories So, how do we define learning theories? So, theories in education didn't begin in earnest until the early 20th century, but curiosity about humans learn dates back to the ancient Greek philosophers Socrates, Plato, and Aristotle. They explored whether knowledge and truth could be found within oneself or through external observation. Now, by the 19th century, psychologists began to answer this question with scientific studies. So the goal was to understand objectively how people learn and then develop teaching approaches accordingly. In the 20th century, the debate among educational theories centered on behaviorist theory versus cognitive psychology. Or, in other words, do people learn by responding to external stimuli or by using their brains to construct knowledge from external data? Now, much research, study, and debate have given rise to the following five learning theories. One is behaviorism. Now, as simply psychology puts it, behaviorism is only concerned with observable stimulus response behaviors. So, as they can be studied in a systematic and observable manner. Now, learning is based on a system of routines that treated information into students' memory bank, as well as positive feedback from teachers and an educational institution itself. If students do an excellent job, they receive positive reinforcement and are signaled out for recognition. Now, when we say cognitism, learning relies on both external factors like information or data and the internal thought process. This was developed in the 1950s, and this theory moves away from behaviorism to focus on the mind's role in learning. So, according to the International Bureau of Education, in cognitive psychology, learning is understood as the acquisition of knowledge. The learner is an information processor who absorbs information, undertakes cognitive operations on it, and stocks it in memory. With constructivism, the learner builds upon his or her previous experience and the understanding to construct a new understanding. The passive view of teaching views the learner as an empty vessel to filled with knowledge. Explains simply psychology, whereas constructivism states that learners construct meaning only through active engagement with the world. So, for example, experiments or real world problem solving. When we say humanism, this is about a learner centric approach in which the potential is the focus rather than the method of materials. So, with the understanding that people are inherently good, humanism focuses on creating an environment conducive to self actualization. In doing so, learners' needs are met and they are then free to determine their own goals while the teacher assists in meeting those learning goals. With connectivism, it's informed by the digital age. Connectivism departs from constructivism by identifying and remediating gaps in knowledge. This is strongly influenced by technology. Connectivism focuses on learners' ability to frequently source and update accurate information, knowing how and where to find the best information is as important as the information itself. It's part of the human condition to crave knowledge. Consequently, numerous scientists, psychologists, and thought leaders have devoted their careers to studying learning theories, understanding how people learn in a critical step in optimizing the learning process. Now, it is for this reason that teacher, educator, prepares programs and spending much of their time having teacher candidates study human development and multiple learning theories. Now, foundational knowledge of how humans learn and specifically how a child learns and develops cognitively is very important or essential for all educators to be their most effective instructors in the classroom. So, whether you're an aspiring or experienced teacher, a student, or a parent of a student, knowing more about each theory can make you more effective in the pursuit of knowledge. Now, how educational theories influence learning? Educational theories influence learning in a variety of ways. For teachers, learning theory examples can impact their approach to instruction and classroom management. Finding the right approach can make the difference between an effective and inspiring classroom experience and an ineffective one. Applied theories directly impact a classroom experience in a variety of ways, such as providing students with structure and a comfortable study environment, helping educators, administrators, students, and parents align on goals and outcomes, empowering teachers to be impacting how and what a person learns, helping outsiders determine what kind of education you had or are receiving, allowing students a voice in determining how the class will be managed, and deciding if instruction will mostly teacher-led or student-led. So, how do learning theories apply in the real world? Education, guys, is an evolving field with a complicated future. And according to Rojman, the effects of applied educational theory can be long lasting. She explains that the learning theories we experience as a student influence the type of work environment we prefer as adults. For example, if one experienced classrooms based heavily on social learning during the K to 12 years, as an adult, one may be very comfortable in a highly collaborative work environment. Reflection on one's own educational history might serve as an insightful tool as to one's own fulfillment in the workplace as an adult. More so, educational theories have come a long way since the days of Socrates and even the pioneers of behaviorism and cognitivism. And while learning theories will no doubt continue to evolve, teachers and students alike can reap the benefits of this evolution as we continue to develop our understanding of how humans most effectively learn.